Guys, finally, Callie is back to being happy. Why? Because the vampires are back. Oh, man. Okay, for real, we are back. Season 2, episode 3 today. Nearly done with New Moon, flying through. And we once again have my younger brother Jacob here. If you have not been following along, Jacob is reading New Moon for the first time. He has never read any of the Twilight books nor seen the movies, and he's trying to figure out what he thinks is happening. I feel like so far, Jake, you have actually like a pretty good idea of what's happening in the book. So I think let's just start off. Any questions answered this week
Yeah.
that you had previously?
I mean, so a number of minor things. So I think I now know Bella used to live in Phoenix because she mentioned oh, a nostalgic dream about Phoenix. I'm like, didn't know she was ever in Phoenix. Okay. Um, yeah, the whole more about the what went down in the end of last book, that she got bit and then Edward sucked the venom out, was a thing. Also, that it's venom is a thing, and I guess normally being bit is all it takes to make you a vampire. That was all interesting stuff. Alice talks about she hasn't fed recently, so vampires do hunt and drink blood, just not of people. I think maybe I was confused because they have meat around them, and we're fine. I don't know. I don't know why I got that impression, but that has been uh solved for me, I guess. The Bella just straight up said that Alice can see the future, which was the thing that I kind of guessed, but didn't super know. And then Jasper can influence people's emotions, I guess. I had no idea about that, which is weird because he's in the one scene I had with him, he was the most emotionally unstable, which is maybe intentionally ironic. But so that was fun. And then also, so okay, I still don't really understand this. So there was stated that when Jacob was talking about oh, us werewolves, we can share each other's thoughts. Bella was like, oh, I know just one vampire can do that, which is Edward. And I was under the impression all the vampires could read minds. I think because Alice mentions knowing things, but I'd have to reread it if it was presumably Edward told her something that he mind read.
Yeah, my guess is that there was something about Alice had some vision that it
Yeah.
seemed like she was reading minds.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, because it was about the gift giving. She already knew what the gifts were, and she's like, how did those go over? And so I just assumed it was a mind reading thing that she had mind read to find that out. So that was interesting. I assumed that was all of them could do it. And I'm like, Edward doesn't have anything unique. He's just yeah. There were a number of mentions of Victoria's hair and how weird it was, oh, it's fire like red and all this. I'm like, is there something with that? And then she's like, to my knowledge, Victoria doesn't have anything interesting. And I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. It was just we were just talking about her hair a lot.
Characteristic
Yeah.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da.
Did you have thoughts about what Alice gave updates as to what they're all doing and her talking about the asylum, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the asylum was interesting because oh, as we found out last summer. So I'm like, I wonder how big of a plot point that was. I don't know. I'm intrigued about the asylum stuff, and it feels very maybe that's a cross book thing of more vampire lore thing. Because also she said she found what Carlisle Carlise
Carlisle, yeah.
Carlisle.
I was correct. Excellent. Finding him more recently, and I don't know. So a bit more with that. And I mean an asylum where people become vampires feels like a potential plot point. I guess I learned more about how the timeline for the Cullens, because it sounds like the vibe I'm getting is there are only werewolves when the Cullens are here. the first of this pack werewolves showed up like a year ago. So I'm assuming the vampires showed up a year ago, which also would make sense, like graduation, high school student timeline wise. Um, which I guess I didn't realize, like, which would then imply that both Edward and Bella were both new last year, or Bella wasn't new, and I've misinterpreted that. Um, so that's interesting. And then the fact that the Cullens, like the last time there were werewolves was like 3 generations ago. So it's like they, which I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought about too much, but like they haven't been here that long and like used to live here, but it's like there was a big gap in between those. Was interesting. There was a line when Bella was drowning of like dying, quote unquote, wasn't as good as last time. And I don't know what, like, I'm like, was she like in a euphoric state in the book 1 when she almost died? Or is she talking about like earlier that chapter when she was almost dying? Be like, oh, Edward, maybe dying is better. Like, I wasn't trying to kill myself, but
no, I will clarify that because that's from this book. She's talking about drowning.
Yeah.
And then she starts dying on the beach. And that's where she's like, it's not as good as last time. Like now she doesn't want to die necessarily where she was with it 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think consistently, I mean, this is not like answering a question, but I was thinking last time that it seemed like Edward couldn't read the minds of the werewolf, and also the werewolves aren't showing up in Alice's like telepathy, so that seems to be like a constant. They talk about them that they're like designed to fight werewolves, so like it kind of lines up generally, or the werewolves are designed to fight vampires. Seems to be the vibe. Oh, there's a line that Bella took care of her mother emotionally. So like I've gotten a little more on the backstory, but I still don't really understand what's going on, which she like, it feels like, oh, if her parents got divorced, why was she supporting her mom emotionally? Because it feels like she's supporting her dad emotionally here. So like, I don't know. I still don't quite understand that situation, but you know, there's a little more.
I was gonna ask, do you have thoughts on we've heard a bit about the treaty?
Yeah.
That.
I don't know. I mean, the vibe I'm getting is that I don't know. I mean, I assumed most of the werewolf lore was new, but based on the like quoted like conversation at the beach where she realized Edward was a vampire, he was pretty straight up like, oh yeah, so we're vampires and they're werewolves. And she's like, what? Or, you know, she's like, what, vampires? Who would have thought? And then she forgot the other half of that.
I think it was last week that you predicted that we got some foreshadowing about the werewolves in the previous book. And that conversation that we saw the flashback to is all we got about werewolves. There was nothing else.
She's like, we're probably werewolves. Anyway,
there was a little in Midnight Sun, but not a lot. It was very,
Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. They especially at that scene, they talk about Bella having like a deja vu dream where she had the exact same dream. So like which also like the dreams have been a recurring thing, which makes me think more that means something, or it's just Stephenie Meyer's likes to do that to like getting character psychology. One of the two. I don't
know. Okay. What about, so you meet, you met Alice at the beginning of the book, but they specifically talk about her eye color. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like a teal, whereas like Edward's was like a golden, I think. Nope. Amy is they're both.
It's a topaz, which I don't know if you thought that was teal. That's like an amber kind of color.
Let me Google topaz, I guess.
Yeah. It's like amber.
Maybe I was confusing topaz and turquoise.
Yeah.
That was my problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so that's why I used to. It was like goldy yellow and then red if you drink blood.
Yeah, and then they also talk about her eyes being black when Alice first gets there.
Yeah, because that's the whole like she hugs her and Alice is like, you're kind of seeming tasty. Maybe don't hug me right now. Yeah.
So
also,
go ahead.
I guess they did mention more of Edward killed non-innocents in darker times. So I imagine there was a bit more of that, but like I don't know. I was also curious, like more on like vampire backstory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
Yeah, do you
interesting.
have thoughts on like how or why they don't seemingly like kill humans?
So I mean, like in the early part of the book when we were talking to Carlisle, it seemed like the whole like he wanted to kill himself and then like went through a bunch of stuff. It seems like a very like him redemption thing. I don't know. I mean, because it's weird. Like he made Edward, and then after that, Edward had a while of killing people. Like the fact that I know like Edward's origin story is interesting.
Yeah.
So that I would have thought by the time Carlisle made Edward, he was like already a doctor. So like I would have thought they were already like, hey, we don't kill people. But so maybe they weren't always a like family unit kind of thing. But again, it seems like Alice may implied that they all kind of joined up with this family independently. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But also the fact that I guess it affects the like how the vampires looks makes me seem like there could be like a lore reason they're not doing it also instead of just like a
Yeah.
ethical morality thing. But
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have thoughts on what's going to happen next?
yeah, I mean, so obviously they're all going to Italy, which just as the only other location mentioned, I'm like, okay, sure. Um, I don't know. I honestly I was expecting I like I was really surprised. I thought Edward was going to show up to save her from being drowned because he like knows that the other vampires are hunting her already, you know. So I was surprised. Like he's just been chilling in South Africa or South America for part, and you know was just like, the werewolves will probably take care of it, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, whatever. I'm going to say it. He does not know they're hunting her.
Oh, okay. I mean, wasn't she? I mean, I guess I'm assuming that the voice that she says is this hallucination of him is actually him. The voice in her head responded to things Laurent was saying when they were in a meadow, I think, which would imply that he knew that conversation, but maybe he, I don't know. um
Yeah.
I'm holding back from saying anything, but I've been holding back for 3 weeks now. So
Sorry.
Things happen.
Yeah, no, I think those are most of my interesting that they brought up like vampires are better swimmers than werewolves feels weird to me, but
it does seem weird, doesn't it? Like,
yeah,
They can hold
because
their
also
breath.
one of the like classic vampire things in other stories I think is they like can't cross running water. So like I think there's like actual vampire lore that they would be worse swimmer. Anyways, but it's clearly different.
Yeah. Pretty much all the vampire cliches, like Stephenie Meyers does things to kind of like almost make fun of it, either as
Yeah,
actual jokes, the Cullens say, or like just in opposite of that, which is interesting.
because that was even when she's like, but it's not the full moon. He's like, what? Like,
Yeah.
he said something about Hollywood not getting it right, and I'm like, it's kind of funny because now werewolves have somewhat become like Twilight has become the Hollywood version of. I mean, there's other versions.
you're the Hollywood werewolf.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jake. And then I'm curious. I really feel like, I know your answer, and it's not even the time to ask. But I think we're going to have more to catch up on next week during your segment since it's the end of the book. So I'm curious if you feel like you're Team Edward or Team Jacob or Team
I knew that was going to be the question.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously Jacob like has stuff going on. I just don't know Edward much. Like, there was the part where Jacob's like, I mean, and the other guy like wasn't great. All right, never mind. I'm gonna drop it. I did enjoy that little bit. But I don't know. Like, I again, like she talks in such overly dramatic term. Like she has the whole Romeo and Juliet thing where she's like, oh, but Romeo has abandoned me and there'll never be another Romeo. That's not in the title. Like, certainly, I don't know. It's just that's silly. So I don't know. I like definitely more Jacob, but like,
Yeah.
really more my situation is like, it feels like a shitty situation for Jacob. if she's like I don't know what that like relationship dynamic is if Edward shows back up is more my situation, having little interaction with Edward. They keep implying he's like also not handling it well, but
Yeah.
shrug.
Yeah. Well, you're wrong about her being dramatic, and whatever. That's fine. You guys don't get it. It's fine. It's fine.
I feel like you have openly admitted that you are similar to Bella because you are dramatic. So
because I experience true emotion, unlike you cold souls.
I'm pretty sure you use dramatic, but okay.
Never. And there's no proof of it.
Here's a setup for a TikTok we can make and then flash back to you saying it.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, Jake, nice to chat with you. Bye-bye.
Jacob, you're a cold, emotionless person. Talk to you later. Thanks. Thanks, Callie.
Bye. Okay, next week we'll find out if how you feel about the book as a whole, the blind lead, how it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if I'm going to get more things just jumping like really deep in vampire stuff. You know, like I could see a version of the rest of this book where we just like, all right, we don't talk to the werewolves again, and like book 3 is where it all like comes back together. But so yeah, I'm curious if I'm going to have more. Honestly, I mean, I think I would have been very surprised at some vampires have special things. Had I think you guys not brought that up to me, and I was like thinking of that. But so curious for next time. What?
Yeah. And my final question, which you rudely interrupted.
I'm sorry. I thought you were wrapping up. I was trying to get an extra thing.
Right. In mid-sentence. So, if you think you're gonna keep reading them, or what? Yeah. What?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty.
No, that's for next week, Jake. It's for next week. Don't answer yet.
You just said there was another question.
Yes, the questions I was saying that we're gonna ask you next week when you interrupted me.
I'm sorry.
I
won't interrupt you next week.
The dynamic is real right now.
Ask the question.
Okay, potentially. Also, maybe we do a bonus episode where then we actually answer all Jake's questions instead of just sitting here listening to him in between our seasons.
I have been, when I've been editing, I've been compiling Jacob's theories and thoughts. So I have a list. So.
Okay, great. Phenomenal. Well, thanks once again for your insight, Jake.
Yeah.
And we'll chat more for the finale next week, end of the book.
Woot.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Huzzah.
I thought his theory about the asylum where people turn into vampires sounded really interesting.
Sounds so creepy.
I know.
It took a lot of restraint to not say anything.
I know. I feel like that particular conversation, we were both just like, didn't say anything.
Don't say a word. I couldn't help it, clearly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we didn't talk about, but we're reading chapter 12 through 18 this week. With the corresponding movie clip, as always. Those timestamps can be found on the Instagram. Okay. Do you want to jump into chapter 12? Anything else we need to say from Jake's theorizing?
I don't think so. The rest of the stuff I wasn't too surprised by.
Yeah.
I think we can jump into chapter 12,
Okay.
where we
Okay.
find out who was tapping at the window. Did you think it was Victoria when she talked about it being Victoria?
No, then I was like, oh, it's not Victoria because she's scared it's Victoria.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. That checks out. I
Yeah.
was pretty sure that it was Jacob. I thought it was either Jacob or Alice. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it was Jacob.
it was.
Although technically the tapping was a tree.
Yeah, yeah.
Jacob was in a tree, clumsily trying to jump into her window.
Which man is that different than the movies where he just effortlessly like runs up the wall and jumps on the tree and jumps in her window? I'm like, so much more graceful in the movie, but
Yeah.
I feel like they're trying to show like over time like him getting like more a hang of like being a werewolf, and right now it's the beginning, so it's like he's still clumsy.
Yeah. Also, like, you think about like he's going through like this big growth spurt, getting all those new muscles, like it's like basically a new body. Like he's just being a little baby giraffe, it's cute. Oh man. Okay.
So we get them talking and Jacob alluding to something that's going on and how he shouldn't be there and he can't tell her, but there is something and she knows everything, but she just needs to know it and
Yeah.
whatnot. And um, I made a note saying, if I were Bella, I would be so annoyed. At this point, I'm not annoyed with him because I know what's going on. But if I were her, I'd be like, why'd you even come here? Like, what?
Yeah.
What was the point? Which she kind of is like, why are you here if you aren't going to tell me
Yeah.
anything?
I just think it's so dumb because he knows that she kept the Cullen secret. Like,
Yeah.
she won't even tell him that they're vampires, even though she like knows he knows at this
I
point.
know.
And the idea, yeah, that he wouldn't or she wouldn't keep his secret is so dumb.
Well, that's the thing though, I don't think it's just him like not choosing not to tell her. Like he clearly wants her to know, but like it even talks about, I
Yeah.
highlighted it where it says that he inhaled deeply and says, "Do you remember all the and he was going to say stories, but got cut off and couldn't finish his own question because like I made a note. I'm like, is Sam somehow preventing him from speaking right now? And he pretty much was like,
Yeah. Yeah. We do find out later that he was preventing him from saying anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, I did not know this.
Yeah.
When I wrote my notes at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just like, this is dumb. I was annoyed.
Yeah, no, I couldn't remember the exact details, but I was like, I think that might be happening. But
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Man. Okay. On this note, my next note is granted in the light of finding out Seth has literally like controlled him, it's not as dumb, but this is, my angry notes.
You're talking about Sam controlling him, right?
Yes.
Okay, you said Seth. I was like,
nope. Keep still confusing those two. It's gonna be a bummer when Seth becomes a werewolf. Okay. So it's once again like Jacob mirroring how Edward treated her. And so it's again like, I can't tell you. You have to just guess and figure it out on your own so I don't technically break the rules.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a note where he says something about how like when she figures out to come and talk to him if she wants to even see him, and she's like, why wouldn't I want to see you? And he's like, oh, I can think of a reason or whatever. And I'm like, I really hope this like the reason that he thinks that Bella might not want to see him is because he's like the enemy of the vampires and not because he views himself as a monster and all that crap, because I'm like, it's just the same thing. And based on what happens later, I think that's the case because he's I don't know. It could be either one. I guess it could be that they're dating. Maybe it's that.
I thought it was that. I thought it was he thought of himself as a monster. And I do feel like he gets over it. Like he doesn't stay in that like Edward does clearly for like 98 years. But I do think initially, yeah, that's where That's where he's at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Bella figures out that Jacob is a werewolf just in time to realize that Charlie is going to hunt some giant wolves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great timing.
Oh man.
Also, she like
Yeah,
connects the fact that it's the wolves that are attacking people, and she thinks
yeah,
that Jacob is attacking people. And
yep.
she says something about like what is it? Something about he was a her best friend, and if he was, oh, maybe this is later. It might be later. Oh yeah, I'm thinking of something that happens later. But she does realize that. And it does bug me that she assumes that Jacob is a monster versus with the vampires. Like
Yes,
she gave
I
them the
have
benefit
this
of the
note.
doubt. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I am like, it's so interesting to me that she's sitting there like debating the ethics of like him being a werewolf and hunting people and all this stuff, but like she had zero qualms with Edward. She really didn't even ask him if he hunts people. Like,
Also,
she,
she even like saw the wolves go after Laurent. So wouldn't she like and she remembered about them being the enemies of like that werewolves and vampires were
yeah,
enemies. I'm like, she clearly is not great at connecting dots sometimes.
no, but I think that actually this is an intentional choice, that there's something about Bella that is like drawn to the vampires, and it's like, I don't know, like a destiny thing or something. Again, do I know it's actually that and not like poor consistency in the writing? No, but it's better if I believe this, which is like her being so like, she's been so chill. She's been so like nothing with the Cullens the whole time. Like she just wants to be there. And so then seeing all this like debate over the werewolves, it's because she is like, something in her is just drawn to being a vampire. That's what I'm going to stick with.
I think that's a decent theory.
Yeah. No. Or I'm just trying to support my own bias,
I mean,
which is preference for the Cullens. So whatever. Either way.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to add for chapter 12, or do you want to move on to 13?
I don't have anything else for 12, so we can move on to 13.
Okay, great. My first note for 13 is she goes and parks at the beach to wait for Jacob, which you may remember explicitly. Charlie has said you're going right to Jacob's and nowhere else, right? And she once again is lying to him, and like she really didn't. She did lie to Charlie some in book one, but not as like overtly disobeying him, kind of, more like just misleading him. And so again, she's doing like the exact opposite of what she told Charlie, which yeah, is just interesting to note about like her character. And she clearly is not taking anybody's concern for danger seriously, regardless on who they are.
Yeah, I genuinely did not even catch that she lied to Charlie. It just went over my head completely. Like, was not paying attention to that, but yeah. Wait, is this when goes she goes to Jacob's, but then he's sleeping and then she goes to the beach, right? Okay, okay. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But
yeah, and we saw in the week before, like when she said she wasn't going to go out to the woods, and then she goes hiking.
yeah, that one I definitely caught that.
Yeah.
But
So it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just again like she's overtly doing the opposite of what Charlie says.
And with like the previous one, clearly she didn't know anything about the wolves and stuff, so that's really bad. Like this one, I'm like, I could understand a little bit more, like where she knows what the deal is with the wolves, but she still doesn't. She still thinks they're killing people. So it's like,
Yeah. And she still almost got murdered by Laurent, who she does not think is dead at this point.
And then I have a note. This is actually what I was going to bring up earlier, but I realized I was talking about the wrong thing. She has a note here when she goes to Jacob's and sees him sleeping and about him looking so innocent and vulnerable. And she says, Jacob was my friend, whether he killed people or not. And I'm like, that is an insane take. Like, I'm like, maybe he shouldn't be your friend if he's killing people. Like, just that's such a definitive statement that I was shocked by. And I find it so funny. She says, Jacob was my friend whether he killed people or not, and I didn't know what I was going to do about that. So good.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not going to keep agreeing with how Bella feels about stuff. I feel too called out. I can't have you and Jake on. I feel ganged up on.
And I just want to say, I'm not like attacking Bella in any way, but I'm just like, that's crazy to me. Like, this crazy. I specifically made a note. I actually wasn't even really making fun of her in this situation. Now I kind of am, but I just said like, damn, it's kind of crazy to hear her thought process about what's going on when I know she's wrong. Like,
yeah, no, mostly I'm laughing because that's obviously a crazy thing, and it did not make my notes in.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? That was my first note, and your first note was about her not listening to Charlie.
Yeah.
Very different notes, but
yeah. Either
was caught with the other one.
Nope. Oh man. Okay, I do love when she finally does go into the house, she like barges in right past Billy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know why, but like the only glimpses in the first two books of her truly being a badass are when she is defying Billy.
It's true.
Like,
it's true.
I don't know what it is about him, but makes her so sassy.
Yeah.
So funny.
That is funny. I didn't connect that, but my next note is when Jacob and Bella are talking. I don't know if you have anything before that, but
no, I don't.
Okay. I just was wondering how you felt about this situation because it is a classic miscommunication trope where but it is pretty short-lived, so I wasn't sure if that was as annoying.
Yeah, I do have a note about the miscommunication, of course, because we know how it grates me like no other. But to me, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with the voice of Edward. So mostly I was like, clearly he like can't read her mind, because if he could read her mind in this moment, he would understand that it's a miscommunication. Like if he was reading Bella's mind and Jacob's mind, like, and then he wouldn't be worried that Jacob was actually going to like hurt her.
Sure.
Anyways, that's my note mostly.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think we get like a super specific answer on what's going on with the Edward in her mind kind of thing. But it is like there is an answer, but I don't know if we'll get I could tell you at the end of next week if it isn't super clear in the books, because it is like canon that what is going on, but I don't know how clearly it's stated.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All right, we'll see next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my next comment is about the werewolves killing Laurent. Which is, did they kill Laurent? Because, okay, here's the question I have, right? Because we are led to believe the only way to kill a vampire is you rip off their head and you burn them. But when Edward is thinking about taking his life if something happens to Bella in book 1, he talks about like seeking other vampires to do it for him, or he says if only like the werewolves were an option. So are we just led to believe that like the werewolves have some magic that lets them kill vampires without having to burn them? Because we have no reference of them doing
that they didn't burn them. They could start a fire pretty easily, I would think. So,
I mean, I guess he just doesn't say anything about it, and it's weird to me that Bella doesn't like ask him, because she knows there's only one way to kill a vampire. And if I was her, I would be hella paranoid about this. Like, she just accepts they killed him, but like she knows that if they just ripped him apart, granted, you see this more in like, is it Breaking Dawn? I'm pretty sure, where they're like ripped apart, but then they're like coming back together or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just am like, why do you just like accept that if you know it's like hyper specific? There's only certain ways they can die. But again,
I feel like she accepts a lot of things without critically thinking about them, you know, or asking questions. Like,
that's true, but normally I'm aligned and I'm like, you're right. Obviously, let's move forward. This time I'm like, think, Bella, think.
see, now this is what I'm thinking about all the time. So this didn't even catch me because I'm like, yeah, she's just not thinking about it, like, you know, or doesn't think to ask questions.
Yeah, I mean,
it's funny our different notes that we have, because you were noting that, and I noted that I thought it was hilarious that when Bella says like about killing people, and that the only reason that she wouldn't want to hang out with him is because of that, and he's like, oh really, is that all? You're just scared of me because I'm a murderer? That's the only reason? And the fact that he says that instead of clarifying he is not a murderer. Well, I guess technically he is. He killed Theron, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Which he does. He is concerned that she is going to be upset about that.
Yeah. Worried that they're friends.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, man. Yeah. Okay, I did also in this chapter get an answer to a question you asked earlier, which was, do I have any idea of what makes the werewolves turn? I said no. Now we know it's basically like when they're like mad or like intense emotion.
Yeah, so I had a note later on about this, but we can talk about it now since we're talking about it. That we talked about last week or the week before, about how when Bella and Jacob get in a confrontation, and about how we're like, well, why doesn't he bring up the fact like about like how he's mad about that she had dated a vampire or whatever. And I'm pretty sure the reasoning was that he didn't want to get mad and turn at that moment. So that was my thought. And then I mean, we can get into it later on when it comes up, but my thought was more specifically around what happened with Seth and Leah, that he was worried about that. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So
man.
I also had a note around here that Bella misinterpreted what Jacob had said about it not being safe when he came to her room, and I'm like, Bella, you missed the point again there, and thought that Jacob was somehow in danger and not that she was in danger. And I don't get how she missed that.
Classic.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my next thing, which is about Victoria. So Bella tells Jacob about Victoria, and she is clearly deeply frightened of her, which I actually think is kind of weird. I mean, I guess like she knows from Laurent that Victoria is trying to hunt her down and kill her. So that part is valid. But she seems to all of a sudden think of Victoria as like this, like the big, big bad, you know, like she's worse than other vampires. She's acting to me like she thinks she's worse than James, but Bella has literally only seen her at the baseball game, right?
Yeah. I'm wondering
like jumpy.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because like the only encounter she has had with someone going after her is James, and that was just kind of for funsies. And now it's like seeking vengeance, so it's even more serious. And she knows that the vampires aren't there to protect her, like the Cullens aren't. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought. But you are right. Like she definitely seems much more concerned about it than what.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just think like I feel like all of a sudden Victoria has become like the like super like menacing terror figure, and I'm like, we honestly don't, it feels like artificially put on her, besides the fact that she's like a vampire hunting her, which is valid, but it just doesn't seem valid for Bella in light of all the things she has not given one shit about being in danger, that she's so freaked out and she doesn't have as much reason. I think what you said makes sense, but I just am like, I don't know. It feels like they're really like trying to force Victoria into being like scarier than we like believe her to be, instead of just letting us like slowly build and realize like how evil and terrifying she is. Like they're just like trying to like force that role on her and convince us now through
Yeah.
Bella being so scared.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I also like there was a lot more talk of Victoria this book than I expected there to be. So now I'm
Yeah.
wondering if I got it wrong and she's not as big in Eclipse, but also maybe she is because they're going to Italy now, so they're not going to be by Victoria, I assume. So then
Yeah.
back and she's still there, maybe? I don't know.
If they freaking leave this thread undealt with for another whole book,
I think
like
they
with
might.
nothing,
I
like
think they might. I don't know for sure, but
unreal. It will be in my complaints list at the end of this book, if they do. Not that they can do something and she can come back, that's fine. But to take zero action against her again would be literally insane. So,
yeah.
I
And
don't
then
know. We'll see.
in the movie, did you watch the movie this week?
Yeah.
Okay. The movies, we saw more of Victoria, and she might have killed Harry Clearwater, which I didn't remember.
Right.
So, and not a heart attack. And I'm curious, we must get that in the books. They wouldn't have just done that for the movies, I don't think. But I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe the director felt like me and was like, why is Victoria suddenly such a scary person?
That could be true. Yeah, that
I
could
don't
be.
know.
Because you think they would mention that to Bella, like that it was
Yeah.
Victoria. Or maybe they didn't because they figured out like while Jacob was kind of like arguing with her. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, mostly I just feel like you wouldn't confuse a vampire attack and a heart attack, you know?
Well,
So,
it's also like in the movies, like she didn't bite him. Did
yeah.
she? Yeah.
No.
So maybe he had a
No.
heart attack, but it was from
Because
this?
of her?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't really clear how he died. So,
Yeah. Whatever.
yeah.
I mean, not whatever. A man's life, but a fictional man's life. So.
Yeah.
Oh man.
The only other note that I have for this chapter is I was pretty surprised that she just offered up that Edward can read minds. I
Yeah.
was not expecting her to share that. So,
Didn't it say though that she then felt kind of like guilty about it? Like
yeah.
she felt bad? Yeah. So, and then yeah, Jacob, we also find out the pack all can read each other's minds nonstop. Like just the stream of consciousness, they can't turn it off. I also think the line where Bella asks if he can read her mind and he says, "Nah, I just pay attention," is like cute and also a dig at Edward.
I love that line. I made a note of that line. I'm like, that's why I like Jacob so much. I like people who pay attention. So, yeah.
Oh man.
But it
Okay.
definitely was a dig at Edward,
Yeah.
whether he
Yeah.
knew it or not.
Yeah. So then uh now she knows about the werewolves, and we get kind of a turn at this point where Bella starts becoming more integrated with the pack. My first note for chapter 14 is that Jacob starts calling her honey, which gives me the biggest ick. Blech, I hate it. They are literally just friends. He is literally younger than her, and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it because I love Jacob, but I do think it's weird for the situation. But I also find it weird that Bella like doesn't comment on it at all. You know,
Yeah,
like he
for
doesn't.
sure.
Which I guess we kind of get into like later about her thoughts and feelings around Jacob. So I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um, yeah, I honestly have very little. I only have two other notes for this whole chapter. So I don't know what you have, but my one of them I'm not even sure what I'm referring to. So my final comment is about um her dream that
yeah,
she has, which I think is the end of the chapter. So if you have anything else.
we've moved on to chapter 14, right? Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think we said chapter 14, but yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I already talked about that. I had a bit of a note about the Leah and Seth thing, which I guess we'll share explicitly if people aren't reading along. It's that how Seth lost control and well, do we get the backstory about it yet? I don't know. We at least see that Leah has a large
Yeah.
scar that is on her face and
Yeah.
is and Seth doesn't
Yeah.
like staring and whatnot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um I also had a note, I didn't remember this at all, about why they think Quill would be next is because he has werewolf like lineage and that
Mhm.
we learned that there was so do we learn in this chapter that there was three werewolves? Maybe that's a future one. No, I thought it was this one. Oh, nope, it's not this one. That happens later. We
Yeah.
learned that Quill has werewolf lineage, but we don't learn exactly what the lineage is yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yep.
a lot of other notes.
Yeah, it was a shorter chapter. Um, but yeah, the dream that Bella has is her and Emily together holding hands as they wait for the werewolf pack to come back. Um, which is just interesting. I mean, Jake talked about when he was on that, like, really in this book, it's very dream heavy. We talked some about her dreams in Twilight, but I feel like there's a lot being communicated through what Bella is dreaming about because she's not really allowing her subconscious to like admit feelings she has, both like how desperately like upset she is, like she's trying to like hide that from people about Edward, and then that she's like into Jacob. You know, like she won't like admit any of it. So it's just interesting that then all of that is communicated through her dreams and like therefore her subconscious. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I also think I misspoke earlier. I think I said Leah instead of Emily and possibly Seth instead of Sam. So I was talking about Sam and Emily. Emily's the one
Right.
that's but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I said Leah. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I was like, I feel like we don't talk about Leah till much further, but
no.
whatever.
I'm sorry.
Then I figured
Emily and
out.
Sam. Emily and Sam.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So which I really
Oh,
like Emily as a character, and I think she's translated very well to the movies for being a more minor character. So
yeah. Yeah. Me too. She's very sweet,
yeah.
honestly. I'm like, yeah, sounds like kind of a good life, like a good amount of chaos, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, that's appealing. Oh, man. Okay, you want to jump into chapter 15?
Yeah, chapter 15, where Belle
Okay, I have
sends her
a
break at the res.
Yep. I have a lot more notes for this one.
My first note, fuck Mike. Literally my note.
Oh man. I was editing our TikToks earlier today, and PS follow us on TikTok, and I was editing the clip where Jake is like, I don't know why there's shade on this Mike Newton character, and both of us are like, there's shade for Mike.
Mike
Anyways,
is
that was funny.
probably my least favorite character in the whole series, honestly.
Yeah.
I also did just see an interview that was done with Anna Kendrick talking about if she really forgot that she was in Twilight or not. And she was talking about how she just felt like very disconnected from it because she wasn't like the main part of Twilight. And she's like, I'm not going to be anybody's favorite character. I'm just the human girl at school. I'm like, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Jessica might be my least favorite character more than Mike. I don't know. I just feel like.
Yeah. I feel like in real life, well, no, I was gonna say I might like Mike less, but no, I also wouldn't like Jessica. Yeah, Jessica like pretends to be her friend kind of thing and is really a pretty shitty person versus Mike is just being stupid and jealous and, you know.
Yeah, Mike is at least honest about where he's at, where Jessica is like being manipulative to be like, she's like a cool mean girl. Like Jessica is wanting to star in Mean Girls and is bummed that the movie was Twilight instead, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
So, yeah. Anyways. Oh man. Okay, the only positive of Mike at the beginning of this chapter is he is kind of like, Bella, stop being an idiot. Everybody knows Jacob is absolutely obsessed with you. And like, you're basically being awful by like pretending that's not happening. And like, you're just friends.
I do think he had like a fair point calling that out, but the specific note where I said fuck Mike was where he said, and girls are cruel under his breath. And I'm like, oh, man.
No. That's, whatever. Guys, don't make gender stereotypes for either gender as a whole. It's just messed up. Okay, internet? Welcome. Anyways, Mike, what a character. I don't know. But yeah, I was glad that like he like said it that overtly and seemingly Bella listened because she Nope, just kidding. I'm getting lost. I was thinking about, is this where they're at the movies?
No, that happened quite a while ago.
Last week. Okay, great. I was like, that is not what's happening, right? No,
I think that's the last time we saw Mike. But
yeah, guys, I got so confused because we stopped recording last week and then I just jumped back into the reading, but I didn't finish the reading. So I read chapters like whatever 7 or wherever we ended through 15 last week, all in the same day. With a pause to record, and then picked up and read 16, 17, and 18 today. Anyways, whatever. So ignore my bad timeline. But
no, this like whole chapter, literally, I take like little notes on like what happens in the chapter, and literally my sentence is just spending spring break at the res, going cliff diving. Like that's essentially what it is. Because right after she has a conversation with Mike, it talks about that night she goes to Billy's house with Charlie, and Sam and Emily are also there. So
yeah. Okay, I'm re-caught up where we are. Okay, and I get why she decides to spend spring break in La Push, like for her safety, but also it seems like a really bad thing to do for her anxiety to be like trapped somewhere. Like, I don't know. I just think like all that time just in her head without even like making dinner for Charlie or any of the other like normal guises of like trying to act like she's okay. I don't know. I just thought it seemed like a bad idea, but I guess bad idea for her mental health, good idea for staying alive. So probably fine. Yeah. And then she's going cliff diving.
I have a couple of notes before that.
Great.
So this is where we learn about Quill's great grandfather, I think it is.
Yeah.
is the same as Jacob's great-grandfather, because we learned that Jacob has two great-grandfathers who were werewolves, one on each side, Will and Ephraim. And then there's a third one, which was related to Sam. So, yeah. We learned that. And then we also wait, maybe this is after the cliff diving. Yeah, never mind. That's after the cliff diving, I think. Okay, yep. Okay, now cliff diving.
She goes cliff diving by herself because she's desperate to hear Edward's voice. Yeah. Concerning. Also, she has not told anyone she's hearing this voice, right? No, she is not.
No.
No one knows. Okay. Yeah. The thing I think is interesting that for whatever reason I just noticed while I was reading this today is that when she's hearing Edward's voice, it is in normal quotes, like he is talking to her, versus her responses are in italics, like she's saying them in her head. Yeah. But Edward's voice is not, at least the text is not formatted in a way to lead us to believe it's in her head, something she's hearing, which I just think is an interesting note. I don't know. But again, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
I really want to tell you, but I don't know.
It's all right. Next week. I
don't think we'll get any more though, because maybe we will.
In the whole book? We won't get any answers in this book? We have to wait till Eclipse? Or Breaking Dawn?
I don't know if any more is said about it. I don't know. How much should I say or not say?
Well, let's just pause. Just say nothing for this week and we'll discuss. We'll discuss. Because I want to see, if there's anything and we can figure it out.
Yeah, we could talk about it with Jacob too, because
true.
Thoughts about it also. So
okay. Then Bella jumps. She has become a thrill seeker, thinks it's incredible.
Which, I'm sorry, it is insane that accident-prone Bella goes cliff diving by herself. Like, that'd be insane for anybody to do that, like, from 100 feet into the ocean where there's a bunch of rocks. But especially her. I'm like, I get that she's seeking adrenaline, but, like, she could have gone with someone and had the same thing, you know?
No, this is a full-on manic episode that she's having. You know, like, she's not well.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Okay, the quote in all of this that really got me. Okay, so Bella jumps, loves it, gets into the water, is like, wow, this water's really cold. Oh no, also there's a huge current because it's literally storming and I jumped into the ocean like in a rocky bay. Yeah. And I guess we don't technically know it's the ocean, but based on the location, I believe it's the ocean. Yeah.
It's a real beach also, and it is on the ocean. So.
Phenomenal news.
I know this from researching for our Twilight trip. So
yeah, great. So then Edward at one point says to her, Bella, don't do this. And she responds to Edward saying it's the only way that you'll stay with me. And like, if that does not speak volumes / everything we need to know about like how desperate she is to have some connection with Edward still, like she's still 100% into him. And it's kind of like, I kind of am like mad at like Charlie and even like Jacob, and like she's like just totally like tricked everyone that she's okay when she like she's literally suicidal. She's so desperate to be with him, and like it's just crazy that no one has like really picked up on this. I get it's like, you know, she's been like catatonic for months, and so they're probably just relieved she's doing somewhat better, but it's still like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
I would have more to say, but it spoils things. So.
Okay. Oh man. Well, then the current catches her, and Bella is literally dying. And that's where chapter 15 ends. Dun dun dun.
Yep. And then we go to chapter 16, titled Paris, which I was really confused when I saw it was called Paris. I'm like, did they go to France and I don't remember it? Totally forgot Paris was a character in Romeo and Juliet. So
Poor Jacob. The Paris.
yeah.
Oh, so yeah, chapter 16 opens. We quickly realize that Jacob has saved her, which is great. Pulled her out of the ocean. And then my next note is she talks about seeing fire. I think I was confused because she talks about seeing fire on the water. And for whatever reason, when I read it, I thought she was saying fire across the bay.
Yeah.
As in like on the bay, not like in the water.
I also interpreted that. I was like, did they just kill Victoria and are like setting a fire? That's
yes. So that's what I thought had happened, that they had caught her and killed her and set her on fire. But then we quickly realized it was Victoria. Bella doesn't realize it yet, but we, the audience, most of you probably picked it up here. Yeah. I certainly did.
This is what I was remembering when we were reading Midnight Sun and they were talking about getting in the water and being untraceable, because I'm like, oh, I remembered like Victoria being in the water when she went cliff diving, and so
yeah. Oof. Ooh. Yeah. Then we see kind of this transition, and Bella is more and more like, shouldn't I just be with Jacob? Edward is never coming back. I like do love him. I just don't love him like I loved Edward. Kind of being like, she wants Jacob to be happy and she feels safe with Jacob. So her basically being like, isn't that enough? Shouldn't I just be like happy with that? And then this is the first time she hears Edward's voice in her head when she is not imminently in danger. And he tells her to be happy.
Yeah.
And directly after, Jacob smells a vampire. Dun, dun, dun.
I did have a note previous to that that I think could hold up a theory you were talking about with the werewolves and calming her and whatnot. And it's when they're at Jacob's house and they fall asleep and she says, for the first time in a very long time, my dream was just a normal dream. So and she also had a note talking about the whole Romeo and Juliet thing, because obviously she talks about that in this chapter. And she said something about how she thought about how Juliet would feel if her Romeo like lost interest or whatever, and that she would go back to her old life and she wouldn't move on. I'm like, Juliet was literally 13 years old. She would have moved on. She would have moved on, Bella.
True. Bella was not thinking about the historical aspect of it.
Yeah.
Also, Bella is like only like what, 4 years older than that.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I'm trying to see if I had another note before Jacob smelled the vampire. That's a weird sentence to say. Before Jacob smelled the vampire. Sorry, one sec. Oh, I did have a note here that she was like thinking about like her feelings for Jacob or whatever, and about like whether or not she could potentially like be in a relationship with him and that kind of thing, and how if she makes it sound, or is it here that she kind of is like, oh, maybe, but it wouldn't be the same kind of thing. And
yeah,
she definitely considers the potential of a relationship much more than I remembered. So, like,
Yeah,
it does make sense where people talk about it being a love triangle a bit more. Like, it still
yeah,
definitely is not the same kind of thing and not like a lot of other love triangles that you see. But,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think like the differentiator being it's never like, will she pick Edward or Jacob? Like
yeah,
anytime Edward is an option, she
yeah,
picks Edward.
yeah.
It is just when she finally is starting to accept that Edward is never coming back, then she's like, should I move on?
Mhm.
More than she's like, should I pick him over Edward? Which again, to me, I'm like, that's not like really a love triangle as much as like
Yeah,
just her being like heartbroken
yeah,
and Jacob being into her, you know? But yeah, I do agree though. I also did not remember it like her like giving it as much consideration. And I
mhm,
think part of it is because I remember like when I read New Moon, I was so mad that she would like so easily give up on Edward, even though she's not giving up on Edward. It just is like,
yeah,
I don't know. You like felt a love that intense. You shouldn't let it go. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. Oh, yeah. Um, but let me see. Oh, yeah. Any other notes before she starts to realize who said vampire is?
No. My only question is, did you know what vampire it was? You probably did, right? Or
I knew it wasn't Edward who was
okay.
back, and
I think it was.
I didn't think it was Carlisle. Did I know based on the car description? Absolutely not. I did not know. I
Yeah,
knew it was not Edward and it was not Rosalie.
yeah. I guess I
uh,
meant if you were worried that I was like Victoria or something, but
oh no. I did remember that one of the Cullens came back like around this time, and I was pretty sure it was Alice. So I wasn't worried that it was actually Victoria at her house.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that chapter does end on quite the cliffhanger where you're wondering. And then chapter 17 starts. Bella suddenly is worried that it is in fact Victoria, but then quickly realizes it's Alice, our favorite. uh, yeah, and we find out here that Alice cannot see Jacob in her visions, so she didn't see Bella getting pulled out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think, is the first time that any of the Cullens become aware that the werewolves are back. Because I don't think any of them
True.
knew at this point.
Yeah, they do not know. They do not know at this point.
And I'm assuming that Alice is aware of the werewolves generally from like Carlisle, but she was not around the last time that the werewolves were there. So,
Yeah. Yep. Um, yeah. And Alice, again, if you didn't read or are not caught up, Alice believes, like, Alice comes because she thinks Bella tried to kill herself. And in fact, she thinks Bella did kill herself. And she's there to see Charlie
yeah.
to, like, help with funeral arrangements and, like, mourn with him. And just, like, she felt like she had to do something. So she was going to, like, go.
Yeah.
And she's shocked that Bella is like okay and there.
Yeah.
It's also kind of the first time we see Alice being like mad, really, in the books, is the next two chapters here, which is also pretty interesting. She's mad at three different people pretty distinctly. So,
I did
yeah.
have a note. Like I get where she's mad and things, but I had one specific note where I said it was a very rare fuck you Alice moment that I don't think I have many or any of those other than this one moment, but talking about how she says there's nothing wrong with werewolves until they lose their tempers. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with vampires until they lose control. So little unfair of you there, Alice, but
Particularly since Jasper's the one who like
yeah,
launched himself
yeah,
at Bella.
that just bugged me. But I
Yeah.
I do get where the rest of her feelings are valid. She also makes some comment about she forgot how exuberant Bella was, and I just thought that was funny because I'm like, I definitely think of Alice as being more exuberant than Bella, but that's probably just because I watch the movies more often, and that's definitely true in the movies. But
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think it's true in the books. Like Alice is way more excitable than Bella for sure.
yeah,
I think this is like the most excited we see Bella like reacting towards them, you know?
yeah,
So yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because clearly she has like not hunted. And so then she's like not used to like humans hugging her.
yeah.
But still, yeah.
Um, Bella also makes a note somewhere around here talking about that it was strange to see Alice looking so dangerous and
Mhm.
like a vampire. And I just made a note there, like wondering why exactly Bella feels this way right now. Is it because she's been like hasn't seen her in a long time or any vampires in a long time, or because she's been spending time with the werewolves, or because of some other reason? I don't know
Yeah,
because she hasn't really seen Alice like upset about this kind of stuff since the
yeah,
last like Bella was pretty much unconscious when they killed James, so she wasn't being like she wasn't aware of like what Alice was doing in that moment. So I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, I think she really hasn't seen her like this because the only other indication where Alice is super menacing is in book one, Edward asking Alice if she can protect Bella. And then she's like super like fierce and growly in front of Edward. But then it seems like she's trying to stay very like calm and positive around Bella, you
Yeah.
know, like she's trying not to scare her more. So I think it kind of is the first time she's seeing Alice like really upset and like angry.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um Bella
Wait,
also in
no, go ahead.
Bella also in this conversation reveals that Victoria and Laurent have been hunting her, basically,
Yeah.
which Alice is shocked about, which is idiotic. It's just so crazy to me. And they kind of justify it by saying Edward specifically told Alice not to look at like Bella's like future, not to look into it. But still,
I don't buy it. I do
no,
not buy it.
it's so short sighted. It's like the biggest plot hole, I think, in this whole book.
I know. I had a note here about this because I'm like, I'm just shocked, like the way that Alice is acting, like, and how all the Cullens, like, just blindly listen to what Edward said. Like, this would be another great part to have Edward's perspective to see what actually happened because it's hard to believe because all of the Cullens, like, are such, like, independent thinkers, and I just cannot imagine where they would all agree to this, even if Edward somehow persuaded them to get them all to agree, especially Alice. Like,
Yeah, particularly Edward. I think maybe I could buy it if Carlisle had
yeah,
made the choice and it was like for the safety of their family, but it's Edward for the safety of Bella, which
mm,
is so different.
yeah,
So different.
and also extremely flawed because it isn't helping.
No,
Maybe. Well, I mean, the werewolves are able to protect her, but they don't know anything about the werewolves. So,
no, she already should have been dead.
yeah,
Yeah, plus the emotional turmoil, which we've already talked about. Like, yeah. We get a lot of comments from Alice in this section saying that she told Edward this was going to happen. And like, she's kind of like muttering it to herself as she's realizing like how bad Bella is. Like, she's getting some glimpses into the fact that Bella is also really depressed and all this stuff. Yeah. And just like her like clearly being upset that like Edward has let her be convinced is how I interpreted it. Like she's also kind of like mad at Edward that she didn't push him more because it really has affected Bella in like bad ways.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I also have some questions for you regarding the whole like Edward and him speaking to Bella. And so you clarified to Jacob that Edward didn't know that the other vampires are hunting her, but Edward was speaking to her when she saw Laurent. So do you have thoughts around that
I
or
forgot that happened.
okay,
But mostly, I don't think Edward thinks Victoria is hunting her because I think he would be back. I
yeah.
don't think he would know Victoria was hunting her and like not and have Alice still be like, no, don't look at her future and like I'm gonna go to South America. Like, I just don't think that makes sense.
Okay. Won't say anything else. Okay. Uh
Ay, ay, ay. I don't like this. Eek. Eek.
I feel like you're expecting that there's gonna be like some big reveal either from the book or from me, and yeah.
I feel like I think that because you keep being like, okay, well, I'm not going to say anything else. So now I
Well,
think there's something
yeah,
else to like figure out.
yeah,
Whatever. We'll talk about it next week.
yeah.
The tension.
Just don't worry about it too much. Just don't. Yeah,
We spent 3 weeks worrying about it, Amy.
yeah. It's
Okay, but my final note for 17, ignoring whatever we will or will not find out about Edward's involvement in this book, is about Alice learning more about her backstory and her parents. And that's so freaking dark that they put her like that she died the day they locked her in the asylum. Messed
that
up.
was
I don't
so
care that it
upsetting.
was, yeah. I don't care that it was the 1920s. That's messed up.
Yeah. I I also had a note about her learning about her background and that she learned that she had a little sister and that her niece is still alive. And I'm like, I did not think about the fact that the vampires, like any of them, might still have living relatives that are human. Like, didn't think about that at all. And I'm sure
Oh,
there's
yeah.
out there somewhere who like have had children that are alive, which is also crazy to think about. Like none of the Cullens, but yeah,
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
crazy. Never thought about that, really.
Yeah.
But
It
but
is
yeah,
crazy.
that was it was heartbreaking to about
Yeah.
her admission being the date on her tombstone was so sad.
I know. That's so depressing.
And it's also
Ugh.
just crazy to me that they didn't have any of Alice's backstory in the movies because I genuinely didn't remember any of her backstory because I haven't read the books in however long. And I'm like, so far, what we get of her backstory, and I don't know how much more we will or won't get in the books, but it's like not a lot to like squeeze into the movies, you know? Like
Yeah. And it like is quite interesting, I think.
it
Yeah.
would add maybe a minute to each movie. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Ugh. Yeah. Um, okay. Chapter 18, our final chapter for this week.
Yeah.
Starts off with Jacob showing up at the house. And Jacob is pissed that Alice is back.
Mm-hmm. Which at first I was like, Jacob, you're being so stupid. Like, come on. But he did make a point that I did not think about that her being there is putting her in danger. Her being Alice being there is putting Bella in danger because the werewolves have to like stay to their territory to like
Yeah,
follow.
honor the treaty.
Yeah. Which I had not thought about. And also I think is something that they don't talk about in the movies because I'm like, it's kind of a large thing, you know? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah. I do think though, I mean, obviously like they're playing up that they instinctively hate each other, but like it is Jacob assuming the vampires cannot protect her, like, you know, which they clearly have literally from this other group of vampires, you know? And in the same way, like Alice assumes the werewolves can't really take care of Bella, which also is false, you know? Like they both just assume the worst about each other.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the big twisty twist of this section is that the phone rings, Jacob answers, and says Charlie's not home. He's at the funeral, to who he thinks is Carlisle, and then hangs up.
Does he think it's Carlisle or is he lying? I genuinely because
I don't know either.
When he said it was Carlisle, I was like, wait, it's Carlisle, not Edward? Because I was confused.
Yeah.
And I assumed he was lying, which I also don't know why he would do. But I mean, the movies makes it clear that he knew it was Edward.
Yeah. It makes more sense for him to be lying than for him to think that it's Carlisle.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, which I was very mad at him for and don't quite understand why. Like, I don't know.
Because the theme of these freaking books is that men are just taking away autonomy of choice from Bella.
But I mean,
oh
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, this is something that I referenced when we read Midnight Sun. Also, another thing that came back where, I can't remember
about reading thoughts on the phone.
Yeah, I think that's why they established it, because otherwise Edward would be able to read his mind and know that Bella was alive. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Classic. Midnight Sun, filling in those plot holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I also have thoughts about, like, so I'm pretty sure that Jacob knew it was Edward. I think that makes the most sense. But my question about it is, like, I don't think he knew that by saying that
no,
Charlie was at a funeral that Edward would assume he was talking about Bella.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay.
No, I don't think he was trying to be that malicious. I just think he wanted to get him off the phone, and he didn't want Bella to have like a chance to like engage with the vampires, you know?
Yeah.
Specifically Edward. But yeah. Yes. Then we get Alice is in the house and pretty freaked out. Mm-hmm. And we found out she has seen Edward do something. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we get a lot more of Alice being mad at Jacob and Jacob being mad at Alice and Bella kind of being mad at both of them, but mostly being worried about Alice. Fast forward, Alice calls Rosalie. This I had zero memory of. Blew my mind. I don't know if there's anything you want to add about the conversation before that. Okay. So we find out Rosalie clearly did something. And quickly we find out what she did, which is horrific. That Rosalie knows from Alice leaving that, like, she just assumes Alice's vision is correct, that Bella has killed herself. Rosalie flies seemingly from Alaska down to Brazil, or at least she calls him.
But I guess I don't think she'd go to Brazil.
Okay, all right. But it says she like sought him out. Okay, you're right. She probably called. That's less dramatic.
Yeah.
Anyway, she calls Edward from Denali, the phone receiver, all the way down to Rio.
A little less dramatic, but it's a phone call.
Much less dramatic. Okay, nonetheless, it's still a dramatic thing, which is that she seeks out Edward to tell him that Bella has killed herself. To which Edward is like, well, I'm gonna kill myself then.
Yeah. Tying it all back to Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So intense. So intense. Yeah.
Bella is like, we gotta do something, and
Yep.
they talk about, or doesn't, I can't remember exactly what happens. She like saying that they have to do something, and Alice like doesn't want to ask her to do it, right? Am I making that
Yep.
up? And
And
then she's
Jacob
like, oh,
is trying
ask
to,
me.
yeah,
And
and Jacob is trying to convince her not to go.
yeah. Which also, another thing that's left out of the movies, a lot is left out of the movies, but this is just like that. I don't remember the stuff that has been left out of the movies. I didn't remember like her being aware that her going to Italy could result in her dying. Like, they
Hmm.
do not make the stakes very high in the movie. I mean, they are high.
Yeah.
Like, they could have been even higher, which I was surprised that they didn't do, you know? But
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's not like a movie to downplay the stakes.
yeah, yeah.
I did remember that I thought she knew she was gonna die, which maybe that's more clear in the next section. Like I thought she was like basically like I'm gonna trade my life for Edward's was
Yeah.
kind of the vibe that's coming in the next section. But yeah. Um yeah, I did laugh though during this section where Jacob is like trying to get between her and Alice and is like clearly worried Alice is gonna like is a threat to her or something. And she literally like shoves him and is like, get out of the way, Jacob. Like it's just like, I don't know, the juxtaposition of like she is nearly like ready to commit to being with him and then like a chapter later I just think this line is so like significant to be like, just in case you were wondering, if Edward is at all an option, she does not care about Jacob. You know, I mean, she cares about him as a friend, but not like, she just is like, you are annoying me. It's like so annoying that you have this feud with Alice. Like, get out of the way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, and Bella remembers Edward's earlier conversation, makes the connection that Edward is going to Italy to see the Volturi, which my phone auto-corrected to the Boiler Tour. So that's fun. Yeah. And then she writes a note to Charlie, grabs her passport, and her and Alice are flying to Italy. Again, reflecting the kind of structure of the last book.
Yeah. I do have a note about like Jacob pleading her not to go, and like I think definitely part of it is him being selfish and not wanting her to go, but he is also very clearly concerned about her safety. Like it isn't just like I don't want you to be with Edward kind of thing. It's like
Yeah.
gonna die. And I don't remember what I was gonna say. Yeah, I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Great.
But then I also have a note at the very end of it about as they're driving away that Bella sees a shred of white near the edge of the trees, and it's a piece of a shoe where we presume that Jacob has turned into a werewolf. And I just made a note of like, it seems like he's very good at controlling when he does or doesn't turn, because I'm pretty surprised he didn't turn with Alice and all that crap. So
yeah,
it probably has to do with the fact that both of his grandfathers or great grandfathers, whatever, were werewolves. And because that was something we didn't really talk about, because it talked about in the book that that was part of the reason that he seemed like a natural at it compared to some of the others, was because of the werewolf lineage in his family. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah.
So. We skipped a lot of the chunk of Bella just being at La Push and hanging out with the pack more. Yeah. But also I was annoyed at that part because I'm like, you're supposed to be with Edward. What's going on? Even though I think it's an interesting, and I like hearing the werewolf dynamics, you know.
So funny that we have such different takes on it. I'm like, yeah, I like New Moon so much more than I like Twilight. It's because of Jake.
I'm deeply annoyed at this book for most of it. But next week it all is turning around because of we're gonna go see Edward in Italy. Cute.
Is it? I don't know if it's cute.
It's not
It's a
cute.
life-or-death situation. But
Not a romantic trip to Italy together. Ugh, tragic. No, I am excited though, because I am like, I think where it gets more interesting for the story. So, yeah.
I'm also curious if there's more stuff that was left out of the movie because I'm like, how do we still have a quarter of the book left? I
Yeah.
don't remember what happens, apparently.
Yeah. I remember some from the book vaguely. Like, I remember some things that are not in the movie, but I don't want to say them in case they're not and to like ruin it if you didn't remember it. So we'll see next week if I remembered correctly or not. But oh man. And next week then we are done with New Moon. Crazy.
Yeah. Oh, also, I was looking at my notes for the movie, and something that I noted was that we didn't get in the movie also was something that we didn't even talk about that happened in the books. But Alice spends the night at Bella's and Bella wakes up to a conversation that Alice and Charlie are having about
Yeah.
how badly Bella had been doing since they left. And I feel like that's a very significant thing and
Yeah.
something that none of the Cullens were aware of how bad it was. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And we honestly, we don't, as readers, don't even know how bad it is. Like hearing Charlie's description is like way more accurate because we've just seen everything through Bella's eyes, which has been very numb. So seeing it more through Charlie's eyes gives like a better description. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That probably is. I had a note that earlier I was like, I'm not even sure what that's about, but I bet it's about that because it was about like grief and talking about like how intense grief can be. And I do think, Stephenie Meyers can do that well. Like she can write emotion well. Her characters are not consistent, but she can write emotion well. Oh, man. Man, oh, man. Well, it was good. It's a good chapter. It's a good section.
Yeah.
So
now we get to go to Italy.
Yeah. Hooray. Well, as always, guys, feel free to leave us a message. You can DM us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, send us a email. All of those are going to be glitterymusings.com or nope, Glittery Musings.
Glittery Musings. And then the email is glitterymusingspod@gmail.com. That's where the .com is.
Great. Gosh, what's wrong with me? Okay. Send us a message. Also, a reminder that we have merch. Mine is coming. I ordered some options today.
I need to do that today.
So check out the merch line. We've got hats, sweatshirts, tote bags, sweatpants, a bunch of stuff. So yeah, we appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you next week for the final episode of New Moon.
Yay! Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.